Tonight. So let us go back in time for a moment and revisit the 2006 governor's race. At the time, Eliot Spitzer had a very wide lead in both the polls and also fundraising, and he barely even deigned to acknowledge his lesser-known, underfunded challenger who was running on the conservative and GOP lines. Now, the press also largely brushed off Spitzer's opponent. They all but dismissed his warnings about the storied anger of the so-called White Knight of Wall Street. And the Spitzer campaign tried to take that anger and make it into an asset by framing it as passion for cleaning up Albany, of course. Now, we all know how the Spitzer story ended, and in retrospect, his opponent, former Assembly Minority Leader John Faso, looks like the political oracle of Delphi. Now Spitzer is back in the public eye, and he's weighing in on the race for his old office. He says he will support his fellow Democrat, but he's also not shy about lambasting him, that's Andrew Cuomo, as one of the dirtiest, nastiest politicians out there. John Faso joins us this evening from New York City to try to make sense of all of this. John, thanks very much for your time.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
The political oracle has joined us from New York.
Yeah, for what it's worth.
Okay, so I want to just take a listen to that Eliot Spitzer comments. They were made yesterday on CNN. Let's take a look.
Here's the other hidden secret here. The Republicans had a candidate who would have won this race, a fellow Steve Levy, who is the county executive in Suffolk County, was trying to get onto the Republican ballot. The leadership of that party said no. They went with Rick Lazio. Rick Lazio was a plain vanilla, almost an incidental candidate, had nothing to say and didn't even say that well. Had Steve Levy been put on the ballot, Steve Levy would be 15 points ahead of Andrew Cuomo. He would be the next governor. Palladino is not as crazy as the media has portrayed him to be. He's a businessman from upstate. He won't win. But trust me, Andrew's going to have a much tighter margin. He's not going to have anything close to what we got in 06.
Okay, well, this is actually not the dirtiest, nastiest comment, but it is still worth talking about. This is Eliot Spitzer saying that you were, in effect, right. You were backing Steve Levy, were you not?
That's correct. I did, and I thought he would have been a strong candidate for governor. But you know, these are all hypotheticals now. They didn't turn out. Carl Palladino was the Republican candidate. I'm going to support him, and I think that it's important that the Republican and conservative lines be united, and I certainly hope that that takes place.
John, in 2006, you talked about, and you know, the media largely did not listen, but not just you, John Whitehead, too, talked about the demeanor of Eliot Spitzer, that he was angry, that he was aggressive, that he was even nasty. Now we find out that anger is actually an asset because Carl Palladino is angry, and everybody thinks that's great. Apparently, the voters do. What do you make about that?
Well, I think certainly people in Western New York, across upstate, have been angry for many years about the condition of the economy. It's only in the last year and a half or so, I would say, that that same frustration with government and governmental policies has spread throughout the rest of the state. Frankly, it's what I was saying back in 2006, that the state was headed over the cliff, that the fiscal policy of the state were not sustainable, that we need to reform pensions and health care, runs the gamut, Medicaid, and that, frankly, the demands of the special interests, particularly the public employee unions, were not sustainable, and they could not be paid for. And now we're seeing that, that prediction, unfortunately, coming true.
Why is it, though, that do you think Eliot Spitzer is taking on this national stage Andrew Cuomo and then saying, well, but I would vote for him, but he's mean?
Well, I really can't say. I haven't spoken to the former governor about that, obviously. It struck me initially it was a little bit of the pot calling the kettle black. But suffice it to say, that is Andrew Cuomo's reputation, as I think many people can attest to. You know, I go back to, frankly, what are the policy choices? I think that some of the positions that Mr. Cuomo is taking now, like a property tax cap, are really not from philosophy or from a principle, but they're really because they've read polls and they see where the public is. And frankly, I don't necessarily criticize that. I just question whether that's really where his principles are. Remember, he's running with the Working Families Party endorsement, which is the equivalent of the Socialist Workers Party in New York State. They want higher taxes. They want more benefits in the public sector, and they, frankly, want more government spending. So that is exactly not the prescription which the state needs to go on. on.
You know, though, I mean, when it comes to Andrew Cuomo, you actually wrote a letter when you were backing Rick Lazio. I mean, you initially backed Steve Levy, then you backed Rick Lazio when Levy didn't make it into the convention, and you compared Cuomo to Spitzer, not necessarily because of demeanor, but because they're running into the center, that they're trying to co-opt the center. The Democrats say that's fine because Carl Paladino's views, in fact, we just saw Assemblyman Morelli was with us last night, and he said Carl Paladino's views and his controversial remarks that some say are racist, misogynist, and sexist are going to bring out the Democratic base. So Andrew Cuomo doesn't have to play to the Democratic base.
You know, I saw Joe say that last night on your show. I respectfully disagree with him. Joe is a great guy. He's a good friend of mine. But I happen to know Carl Paladino. I've known him a number of years, not well, but I've had occasion through the years when I was minority leader to meet with him, to talk about issues. He is a very smart guy. Perhaps he expresses his views in ways that some people find intemperate. But I do think that the philosophy that he wants to bring forth, which is cut government spending, make government live within the means of the people, not the other way around, is a very important one. And I think that he's representative of a viewpoint that is really sweeping the state. And I have been talking to people downstate in the last couple of days, and I find that there are many people in New York City, on Long Island, in Westchester, who are going to be receptive to his views. I do think there's a need for Mr. Paladino to make himself available, to meet with folks. He doesn't have a whole lot of time, but I do think that there's a lot of uncertainty, a lot of disquietude, frankly, about Andrew Cuomo. There are a lot of people that agree with the characterization that Eliot Spitzer made yesterday, and I think that's something that we'll see more of in coming days. I was frankly a little flabbergasted when I saw him say that he had voted for Mayor Bloomberg in 2005 when I remember the public record. He endorsed Freddie Ferrer. So I'm not sure what that means, but it certainly was a very odd thing for him to say.
Do you, however, these statements that Carl Paladino has made, I mean, do you think he should repudiate them? And you don't support them, although you might support the man, or do you support them?
No, look, I think that some of the things that he said were intemperate, unfortunate, and some of them were just things that I would certainly have never said. And I think that upon reflection, he probably wishes he had taken them back. But as we go forward, I really don't think that the public, because of the economic conditions New York is facing, I don't think this is really going to matter to the public very much. I think it's important that he conduct himself with the decorum that people want to see in a governor, but at the same time, what he is expressing in terms of the frustration with the inability and the unwillingness of Albany to deal with the real issues that we face, whether it's energy costs, workers' compensation costs, the liability system, which is driving medical practitioners out of our state, the failure of the state to restrain spending, to reform pensions. You know, just last week, 3 Nassau County police officers retired, each getting over $600,000 in severance because of accumulated sick and vacation time. It's outrageous. A town of Harrison police officer is getting paid by the town, by the taxpayers, to take a dance class. That has nothing to do with his being a police officer. These things are rife all throughout New York State. It needs reform, and this is the thing that Cuomo has not uttered word one about. He's not said that we need to reform the pension system, to go to a defined contribution system, a 401k type system. The state is going to go bankrupt. It cannot pay for these promises that have been made, and the sooner that the politicians and the political establishment get with the program, the better. That's what Carl Paladino is, the anger that he's expressing, the failure over generations under both parties to deal with these issues in an effective way. And I think that I hope over the next few weeks we'll hear from both Paladino and Cuomo specifics as to how they'll deal with this, not in sound bites, not in diversions as to whether someone forwarded some foolish emails a few months ago, but what do they plan to do for the people of the state over the next 4 years?
I actually, unfortunately, have to cut you off, and I also am thinking while you're speaking that there are a lot of people who wish that you would run statewide, and I'm sure that we'll be seeing you again soon. I want to thank you in the meantime, John Faso, for joining us tonight.
Thanks, Liz. Great to be with you.